Hey everyone, welcome to the E2 Effective Elders podcast. Visit us at e2elders.org and please share this good word with others.
Hey everybody, welcome back to E2 Connect, and how grateful we are for the opportunity for elders to speak to elders, but that reach is growing. And many people are joining us in this moment. And we want to thank CDF Capital for their continuing investment in E2 Effective Elders. We are today who we are much because of their investment with us over these many years. Today, we welcome Dr. Jim Estep. And Jim is one of the co-founders of E2. He, David Roadcup, myself, years ago, it was the summer of 2008. We happened to be teaching at Haus Edelweiss in Austria, and it was in that moment that the Holy Spirit birthed this ministry. And Jim is the academic vice president at CCCB, Central Christian College of the Bible, in Moberly, Missouri. Jim, thanks for taking time to be with us today.
Well, great to have the time to take. So,
thank you. Are you in the atrium of the college there? That's a pretty.
This is the atrium of the Union Station in Chicago.
Oh, there you go. Got it. Awesome. Well, I was going to say you've got a pretty sharp-looking campus there.
Yes, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, amazing indeed. Hey, so to make the most of our time, everybody remember that we are in the midst of the holiday season, and during these 7 weeks, we're speaking to all 7 coaches on the E2 coaching bench about bringing hope to the holidays and how we can have a good word for you, not only elders, to share then with those who are within your flock in the local church, but beyond that. It may be that people are sharing the podcast, people are listening in who might be in a valley of discouragement, who might be on a journey of difficulty during the holidays. So everybody who's listening in, Jim's got a good word to speak for us today. Jim, you and Karen, they're in Moberly, Missouri. Tell us a little bit about what are you dealing with this holiday season?
Well, one thing we're dealing with for sure is distance. Now, I'm not being metaphorical or more figurative of distances between our opinions or whatever. I mean the physical distance we're experiencing from our children.
Oh, okay.
This is our first year as empty nesters.
Oh,
and I know many people go, "Oh, empty nest! It's a great season of life."
Mm-hmm.
And I have to confess, when our last child said he's moving to Columbus, Indiana, and we packed him up and sent him on his way, there was a little euphoria. The house is ours. I mean, we there's food still left in the refrigerator when we get up in the morning. There's no noise at 3:00 in the morning from gameplay. There's, it's our home. And that lasted a few weeks, maybe a month. And then all of a sudden we realized we have this large house with 5 bedrooms and basement and upstairs. And there's 2 people, a dog and a cat, rattling around in this place.
Wow.
And even those times when I would get up in the middle of the night, I was used to hearing my son, who was my youngest son, who was playing video games because his work schedule was different than a typical 9 to 5. So he would be up overnight and he was playing with friends from college and even from foreign countries, video games. So I'd hear him down the hall, be able to pop in, even say hi to them. All of a sudden I got up and there was silence. And just frankly, dealing with the distance that children have when they move away and establish lives of their own. We have a son who's married and living in Lincoln, Illinois, with 2 grandkids. And we have a daughter who's married, living in Springfield, Illinois, with 2 grandkids, and a youngest son in Indiana. He's the furthest. But we're experiencing that empty nest syndrome. And during the holidays, you start prepping and you get excited, but you're excited because you're going to have your family with you.
Right.
Well, we're decorating the tree alone. We're preparing all kinds of goodies for the holiday seasons, for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's even. And we're just beginning to realize there's nobody there to help us, in the sense of to join in with us as we're doing all this prepping.
Yeah.
And so while empty nesting may sound great, we're just facing the fact of we're alone in the house with a dog and a cat. And we have to wait for our children to arrive. And in our situation, maybe a little bit different. I know every family is different and has a different dynamic, but we adopted all three of our kids out of foster care. And so, for example, we met our oldest son when he was 14. We met our daughter when she was 10. Our youngest son we adopted when he was 5. And so, many people go, we had 18 years with these kids, and then we put them through college and they left. Well, we didn't have 18 years with our children. With our oldest son, we had 4 or 5 years, and then he was an adult. And so trying to establish a relationship, and we did, I'm going to say we're a very tight family, but then all of a sudden to see that family go, okay, we're moving away. We're moving away. There was even an occasion where we moved, and of course they couldn't. And so all of a sudden there's this distance. And it seems like with the holidays approaching, you used to see them every day. You used to see them all the time when you're living local. And the distance just seems to be highlighted during the season when you say, let's do something special like today. Nobody's around.
Right.
And so that distance, and I know we could bring up things like, yes, there's even the emotional distancing and spiritual distancing, but I mean, even that physical distance of just not being connected together. And I know we can talk about COVID. COVID didn't do any good for us, but even that's even not what we're getting at. We're talking about the literal empty nest syndrome, which by the way, not a problem here, but all of a sudden, my wife and I had to start relating to one another as what? Husband and wife with no kids as intermediaries. I mean, many times for years we would meet and go, okay, who has to be where? Well, I think Dylan has to be at a band practice, and Bud has to be to work, and Debbie has to be at this. Okay, now what? Well, all of a sudden the kids are gone. And those things that occupied all of our time, that kept our calendar full, is now just empty.
Right.
And so we're having to look at each other going, okay, we get to reestablish a whole new dimension to our relationship as Jim and Karen all over again.
Right. Yeah, it's a new day.
In the middle.
Yeah.
And so not that that's a challenge, but it does require you to shift your gears and do some recalibrating of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a whole new way of thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing, that we're dealing with that empty nest syndrome where that some people greet. And it's great for a while, but then all of a sudden you go, let's call the kids. And we've come up with several ways to handle it. And we're looking forward to the holidays because they are coming over for several days. They're coming over for weekends. We're getting ready for them. But, we've had to come up with some pretty unique ways to handle it.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit. How are you dealing then in a practical way with empty nest? And before you share some of those ideas,
sure.
We want people to grasp this is real grief. I can remember when, first of all, we have 2 grown sons, both married, and we have 6 grandkids. Our younger son, after graduating from Lincoln, when you were at Lincoln back in the day, he did a dual major, and one was in mission and the other was in Christian Business Administration. And he ended up, he and his wife, who also graduated from Lincoln, with Team Expansion in Louisville, Kentucky. Long story made short, they are in New Orleans. And Aaron today is a police chaplain there. Well, then we went through that grief with them moving to New Orleans. And our older son, also a graduate of Lincoln as well as Cincinnati Seminary, they moved to Prince Edward Island. And that's a long way away. And I can remember Leah and I going through what you and Karen are now going through. Yes. And we grieved. We actually mourned the physical distance of which you speak. And we worked very hard to bring everybody together throughout the year physically. But tell me, how are you dealing with this distance?
Well, we are doing a couple of things that just sound very, very, I don't know, don't use the word normal, but that anybody could really do. For example, my wife and I just took it upon ourselves. We said, we're going to call the kids every week, at least 2 times. But then we also set up a time that for family on Sunday afternoons, they can Zoom in. So the whole family can be together on Zoom. We can see each other, talk together, share together. We've even talked about doing things like going to St. Louis and meeting them during the season and doing some for example, the Polar Express is in St. Louis, going down there and seeing that. So in short, we're trying to make up for the distance, not by saying, everybody has to travel here, but more, more communication, more video communication, more events that are maybe between everybody, and just space that out. We're also spending more time talking. It used to be those quick phone calls. Remember in high school, you call your child, how are things going? Fine. Anything? No. Thank you very much. Okay. And that's you get this very, very short, college phone call. We're now more learning how to listen. They're more than willing to just kind of, now that they're adults, dump life back at us and they actually want to listen to counsel. So it's kind of fun just to actually have more communication, longer, more meaningful, and being able to reconnect even with them on this level. But we're doing that very intentionally. We didn't just say, well, that's it. And in part, it's also just simply good to have some common practices. Like for Thanksgiving, my daughter and I used to fix a special dish. It would be a lot easier if I fixed it ahead of time. Before, by the way, my wife's family is very large. So we're having 60 people over for Thanksgiving. 60.
Oh, my word.
And so, it's overkill. But literally, there's a dish my daughter and I like to fix. It would be easier if we fixed it ahead of time. I'm not going to do that. I'm waiting for her to get there Friday night to prepare so that we can do it together. Same way with Christmas. There's something my son loves to fix. We're going to fix that together. So in other words, we're trying to preserve some of the traditions, even if it's easier to do it ahead of time and by ourselves, just to keep that alive with the kids. And not to mention the fact that grandkids, because we have 3 grandsons and 1 princess, and that is how it works. That's just, that's the standard. And people go, Dad, isn't that a double standard? I say, yes, get used to it. It's fine. But the simple fact is trying to preserve those traditions even with that generation. So that they have something to look forward to that isn't just the presents under the tree or the turkey on the table.
Yeah, very important. Yeah, I really appreciate what you said about communication. We have to work diligently at communicating when there is a physical distance of separation.
Well, and plus our son, youngest, being in Indiana, that's a different time zone.
Right.
He gets off work at 11 o'clock.
PM? Or 8 PM. Okay.
So we oftentimes have to actually sit up late to call him when he's home finally. So sometimes we're not calling him until 11 Central Time. And we're not getting off the phone till midnight, then having to be in the office the next morning. But I'm going, we have to do that intentionally to catch him when he's available.
Right.
And to catch him when he's able to really, spend some time talking and sharing about the day. So, but that intentional communication, that preserving of the traditions, that pressing pause to wait for them to get here, to do certain things, and not to mention the fact just taking copious pictures. As we, for example, I always like to set the tree up right after Halloween. Now, my wife hates that. He wants to wait till after Thanksgiving. So we have a compromise. We put 1 tree upstairs right after Halloween and 1 tree right after Thanksgiving. So that when we set the one upstairs, we took pictures, video of the little train going around it, sent it out to all the kids. And that started a whole spark of conversation about, okay, it's starting, the season's official now. And that's great. But once again, it's that sharing of the events that they used to be here to see.
Right.
This is something
and
they
they
saw
were
every
a part
day.
of. Right.
They were part of.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're at a distance, and we're realizing that because as we're even doing things like hanging the decorations, we're being reminded we're the ones having to hang the decorations. It used to be 5 people gathered around a tree.
Yeah. Well, and even with us, we bring the grandkids in for the purpose of decorating those trees. Hey, real quick, how did you prepare the 3 kids to leave the Estep home?
Well, we impressed on them that, as a family, we're going to grow up, and we are going to end up going places, for lack of a better word. That we didn't. Ironically, my son stayed in Lincoln, my oldest son, but he was always the one that said he wanted to go to Chicago. My daughter knew she was going to be in business, and she was going to have to go somewhere that. And she and her husband run a restaurant, and she works for a corporation in Springfield. And my youngest son, he was he was the person who just kept trying to figure out what he wanted to do, and all of a sudden figured it out. And when he figured it out, it was like flipping a switch. He was set to do it. And so when he went to Columbus, Indiana, he's doing well. He's got his own apartments, all that. And it's like just overnight, he up and, became the adult that we knew he could be.
Yeah.
But what we did is beforehand, we really did sit down with him and talk about communication. And we also talked about the need for it, and for them also to learn a little bit about listening to us. And let me just give this illustration. Growing up, my parents were from Eastern Kentucky, Johnson County, Kentucky. And my parents, every 2 weeks on the weekends, would go to Johnson County. As a kid, they would take me there and tell me all kinds of stories. And I have to confess, I was a kid. I didn't want to hear stories about what happened 30 years ago, and what was going on that hillside, and what happened on that building, and what, this restaurant. When they got older, I wanted to hear those stories because I knew they weren't going to be there to pass them on. And now they're both gone. And there are days I sit back and go, I wish I could ask them, because they're the only ones that know the answer to this question. And they're both gone. Even their siblings, I've called their siblings, they don't know the answer. And I've told the kids, without trying to be morbid, life is just that way. It's multi-generational. One day we won't be here to share those traditions, and we won't be there to share wisdom. We won't be there to listen and reflect back ideas. But when that happens, it'll be your turn to do it with your children.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to impress on them the need for family cohesion, to stick together, and especially given the fact that we adopted them in. I've done some marriage, retreats and counseling as a minister in the church, and I've kind of compared it to this. You walk in with your manual of what a family ought to be like. Your spouse walks in with the one they experienced. You're given a blank book to write your own manual for the two of you.
Yeah.
The difference is our family book had 5 authors.
Oh, yeah.
Because those 3 came in with other books. And those books, if you have children who have been awarded to the state and can be taken out, adopted out of foster care, their books read very, very different than what the families are we grew up in.
Yeah.
So we had to sit there and go, okay, let's figure out how to make this work. And so the book we wrote seems to have worked, so to speak.
Praise God.
Because we actually looked at them and said, one day you will be closer to us and to one another, even though you're not biologically related. The older 2 are, but the youngest one isn't.
Yeah.
You'll be than your biological families. And they were like, no, that'll never happen. Now we did a family vacation to Florida this summer, and they all flew in and had a great time. And I'm like, that's what we expected.
Yeah.
We had to build that kind of family.
Yeah.
We didn't have time. And so in short, helping them do that with us now, and for them to understand a little bit about family dynamics that families don't like to talk about.
Right.
Just helping them to understand the need for communication, that cohesion, and passing on the tradition and listening to the older generation as we're sharing with them.
Yeah, praise be to God. So as families are in this 7-week series that we call the holidays, this season of life, it may be that some sense of loss has happened because the children have grown up and gone. And it's in that moment that we need to work exceptionally well and intentionally at connecting, closing that distance of physical miles. And we can do that through communication, but we can also do that when we are together to make sure that we invest in that relationship, the reliving of those traditions, perhaps making new traditions, but making sure that the family is cohesive, that everybody is investing relationally. That's a good word. That's a good word. Well, Jim, thank you very much for that. And we wish you and Karen the best in this new season called Empty Nest.
Yes.
And we're confident that you will navigate those waters well.
We hope to.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you. You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.